Beyond the horizon where laws faded, pirates created their own world. Neither heroes nor simple villains, these outlaws built floating societies between creaking timbers and salt-stained decks. Their reality, brutal, brief, but surprisingly organized, challenges everything we thought we knew about life at sea. Being a pirate was never anyone's childhood dream, at least not if they understood what it really meant. Pirates weren't born. They were made through desperation, opportunity, or sometimes pure bad luck. The crew of a typical pirate ship during the golden age of piracy, roughly 1650 to 1730, looked nothing like the matching uniformed sailors of naval vessels. Instead, they resembled a walking, talking jumble of humanity's leftovers. When authorities captured pirate ships in the early 1700s, they often found former Navy officers working alongside escaped slaves, disgraced doctors, and even one-eyed former tax collectors. This wasn't unusual. Pirate ships were perhaps the most diverse workplaces of their era, not from any sense of moral superiority, but because pirates simply couldn't afford to be picky. A reformed pirate in 1704 wrote that the sea welcomes all who dare to sail it, just as pirates accept anyone who can pull their weight, regardless of birthplace or beliefs. What truly set pirate crews apart from their naval counterparts wasn't just their backgrounds, but how they operated. While royal navies ran on strict hierarchies where common sailors were treated little better than animals, pirate ships were surprisingly democratic. The captain wasn't a godlike figure, but more like a CEO who could be voted out during tough times. Pirates created the first written workplace agreements in maritime history. These articles were signed by every crew member and outlined everything from payment structures to compensation for injuries. Lose an eye while capturing a merchant vessel? That's worth 100 pieces of 8. Lose a right hand? 600 pieces. These documents were revolutionary. The first disability insurance plans created by workers themselves. A typical article from a famous pirate ship stated, "If any man shall lose a joint in time of an engagement, shall have 400 pieces of 8. If a limb, 800. When you consider that a skilled laborer might earn 60 to 80 pieces of 8 in an entire year of honest work, these benefits were substantial. You might say pirates were offering better health plans than most modern companies, and with fewer forms to fill out. Daily decision-making happened through voting, with every pirate having equal say regardless of rank or experience. When a notorious captain wanted to attack a heavily armed merchant ship in 1718, his crew voted against it. Despite his fearsome reputation, he respected their decision, something unimaginable on a naval vessel where questioning the captain could get you flogged. This workplace democracy had practical benefits. Crews who felt ownership in decisions fought harder, complained less, and were less likely to mutiny. It wasn't perfect. Experienced sailors still held more sway than newcomers, but it was revolutionary for its time. Don't mistake this democracy for kindness, though. Pirates created harsh punishments for those who violated their trust. Stealing from the common treasure could get you marooned on a deserted island with just a bottle of water and a pistol with one shot. In pirate justice, there were no appeals, and the sentence was carried out immediately. Talk about an efficient court system. One of the most surprising aspects of pirate life was the racial diversity of crews. While slavery was the norm throughout the Caribbean and Americas, many pirate ships offered equality to black crew members. Approximately 25 to 30% of pirates were black, with some rising to leadership positions and later commanding their own ships, while others controlled parts of the Cuban coast in the 1670s. Though uncommon, female pirates were not unheard of and often proved as formidable as their male counterparts. Historical records suggest that in battle, they fought with exceptional ferocity. During one skirmish, as most of the male crew hid below deck, a female pirate challenged them, demanding they come up and fight if they truly considered themselves men. The pirate crew's loyalty wasn't to the king or country, but to each other. They called themselves the Brotherhood and developed their own language and customs. A common greeting between pirates was, "Are you one of us?" A simple question with profound implications about where your loyalties lay. This rough form of democracy fostered strong loyalty among pirate crews. In 1717, a captain addressing his men didn't commend their sailing skills or combat abilities, but instead highlighted their unity. He argued that the true difference between pirates and those who condemned them was not morality, but method. While the wealthy used laws to exploit the poor, pirates took from the rich by sheer courage. These bonds would be tested daily through countless challenges at sea. While stories of pirates focus on buried treasure and dramatic sword fights, the Brotherhood faced a much different reality when the horizon held no ships to plunder. Most days at sea were filled with back-breaking labor, boredom, and the constant battle against nature itself. Dawn broke early on pirate ships. While naval vessels operated with strict bells and watches, pirates often adjusted their schedules based on necessity rather than tradition. Still, most crews were up with the sun when the quartermaster would rouse anyone not on night watch with a kick or a shout. A pirate who sleeps past sunrise might as well sleep with the fishes, went an old sea saying. Daylight was precious for navigation and maintenance, and wasting it was considered a luxury pirates couldn't afford. The morning began with the first meal of the day, hardly a feast by any standard. Pirates survived primarily on hardtack, a brick-like biscuit so tough it could break teeth if not soaked first. A typical breakfast might include these rock-hard crackers dipped in watered-down beer or rum to soften them, alongside salted meat if supplies allowed. Scurvy, a disease caused by vitamin C deficiency, was a constant threat, and smart captains would raid plantations for fruits almost as eagerly as they'd raid merchant ships for gold. After breakfast came the daily assignment of duties. The quartermaster, not the captain, typically managed this task. While pirates prided themselves on their democratic approach to major decisions, daily work was distributed based on skill and experience. Those who could navigate took turns at the helm. Former carpenters maintained the ship's wooden structures. Men who had served in naval gun crews tended the cannons. But regardless of your previous life, everyone scrubbed decks. The wooden decks of pirate ships required constant attention. Seawater, sun, and general wear meant that neglected wood would quickly rot, potentially dooming the entire vessel. Crews would scrub the decks with holystone, a soft sandstone, and seawater often on hands and knees. This monotonous task could take hours, with the tropical sun beating down mercilessly. The saying, "between the devil and the deep blue sea," originated from this work. The devil was the longest seam in the ship's wooden deck, the most difficult to clean and maintain. Sail maintenance was a constant task for pirate crews, as canvas took a relentless beating from wind, rain, and salt. Sailors regularly inspected for tears, reinforced weak spots, and applied tallow and tar for waterproofing. A ship with damaged sails was vulnerable, unable to pursue targets or escape danger. Many pirates became highly skilled with a needle and thread, though it wasn't something they boasted about. One reportedly told his quartermaster to let others believe he had slain 15 men with his cutlass, but to keep quiet about the 3 hours he spent darning the mainsail. Food preparation was another daily chore. The ship's cook, often a pirate who had lost a limb in battle but remained valuable to the crew, would prepare the midday meal in a small galley. Fire was an ever-present danger on wooden ships, so cooking was done in a sandbox or on a brick hearth. The standard fare, salt beef or pork boiled to near mush, peas or beans if available, and more of those tooth-breaking hardtack biscuits. On a good day, the cook might add stolen spices to mask the taste of meat that was often half-rotten. Water management was perhaps the most critical daily task. Fresh water stored in wooden barrels would gradually turn foul, developing algae and acquiring a putrid taste, yet it was precious beyond gold. Records from captured pirate ships show that water barrels were guarded more carefully than treasure chests. One 18th century account describes a pirate crew that executed 3 of their own men for secretly drinking extra water rations during a drought. Weapons required daily attention as well. Salt air rapidly corroded metal, making rust a constant enemy. Pirates spent hours cleaning pistols, sharpening cutlasses, and greasing moving parts. Gunpowder had to be kept perfectly dry, a nearly impossible task on the humid seas. Many crews rotated a portion of their powder daily, bringing it up from storage to dry in the sun before returning it below deck before evening dew could dampen it again. When not engaged in maintenance, pirates filled their hours with games of chance. Dice and cards were common pastimes, though stakes were carefully regulated to prevent serious conflicts over gambling debts. Some crews fashioned crude backgammon boards from scrap wood. These games weren't just for entertainment, they helped maintain mathematical skills essential for dividing plunder. Amid all this work came the unavoidable human needs. Bathroom facilities consisted of the head, an area at the front of the ship where one could hang precariously over openings in the bowsprit to do one's business directly into the sea below. In rough weather, this simple necessity became a death-defying act. As for bathing, it rarely happened. Most pirates went months without a proper wash. Some would strip down during rainstorms to rinse off sea salt, while others occasionally cleaned themselves with seawater and sand as an abrasive. The resulting body odor was so normal that it went unremarked in most pirate accounts. When a pirate ship was spotted from a distance, sailors often claimed they could smell it before they could see it. One captured merchant captain wrote in 1718 that he surrendered his vessel not due to the pirates' fearsome weapons, but because their unbearable stench had already begun to board my ship from 100 yards away. Perhaps this was the real reason pirates wore perfumed handkerchiefs around their necks, not for style, but as emergency nose protection during crew meetings. Sleep came in short shifts rather than long nights. Most crews operated on a watch system, with half the men working while the others rested. The typical pirate slept on the hard deck or in a hammock slung in crowded quarters below. Privacy didn't exist. Personal space extended only as far as one's hammock or sea chest, often just a small wooden box containing every earthly possession. This grinding routine of work, mediocre food, and uncomfortable rest might seem a poor trade for honest labor on land. But for many, the promise of occasional plunder, the lack of aristocratic officers, and the complex brotherhood of outcasts made it worthwhile. Besides, for escaped slaves, former convicts, or men who had fled debt, returning to civilization promised only chains or the gallows. The monotony of daily life could be suddenly shattered with a single shout from the crow's nest. But contrary to popular belief, pirates didn't attack every vessel they spotted. The hunt was a calculated affair. More chess than checkers, more fox than wolf. Pirates rarely wandered the seas, hoping to stumble upon random prey. The Caribbean and Atlantic shipping lanes of the 1700s were too vast for such a haphazard approach. Success depended on careful planning, solid intelligence, and strategic positioning. The average pirate ship might spot only one potential target every week or two, making each opportunity precious. For pirates, information was often more valuable than gold. Before setting sail, crews relied on a web of informants in port towns to gather intelligence. Corrupt harbor officials could be bribed for shipping schedules, tavern keepers overheard talk of valuable cargo, and even reputable merchants occasionally supplied tips in exchange for a share of the loot. Court records from the 1720s reveal that nearly 20% of captured pirates implicated legitimate businessmen as their secret partners. One pirate, during his trial, remarked that the only real difference between pirates and merchants was that pirates openly admitted to theft, while merchants hid behind respectability. The judge was not amused. He sentenced the pirate to hang the next morning as his merchant accomplices watched from the crowd as upstanding citizens. Maps were crucial tools in the pirate arsenal, though not the treasure maps of fiction. Pirates collected and guarded detailed navigational charts showing shipping lanes, seasonal wind patterns, and favorable hunting grounds. These maps often included information rarely found on naval charts. The depth a merchant ship would sit in the water when fully laden with cargo, the schedules of naval patrols, and the locations of friendly ports where pirates could sell stolen goods. A favorite hunting ground was the choke point, narrow passages where shipping was forced to converge. The windward passage between Cuba and Hispaniola funneled ships from Europe to Jamaica. The waters off Charleston concentrated vessels heading to and from the American colonies. The straits near the Bahamas channeled ships returning to Europe with colonial goods. By positioning themselves at these maritime bottlenecks, pirates increased their chances of encounters from once a fortnight to nearly daily. Pirates were surprisingly strategic when selecting targets, favoring intimidation over combat. Despite their ruthless reputation, they avoided unnecessary fights that could damage ships, injure crew members, or reduce profits. The ideal prize was a well-loaded merchant vessel with minimal defenses, one that would surrender without resistance. As one pirate noted in his journal, the best target was fat of cargo and thin of courage. Those who recklessly damaged valuable plunder risked more than a reprimand. They could be voted out of their share, proving that even pirate democracy had limits when profit was on the line. Intelligence helped identify these ideal targets. Spanish treasure galleons might seem the perfect prize, but they were heavily armed and escorted by warships. Far better to target merchant vessels from smaller trading companies carrying less spectacular but still valuable goods like sugar, tobacco, or textiles and lacking the means to put up serious resistance. Timing was everything. Pirates tracked the seasonal patterns of shipping. Sugar from the Caribbean sailed for Europe in the late summer, slave ships headed to the Americas in the spring, and East India Company vessels returned from Asia in the early fall laden with spices and silk. By following these patterns, a pirate crew could position themselves to intercept the richest prizes when they were most vulnerable. The pirate vessel itself was a weapon in the hunt. While Hollywood depicts massive ships bristling with cannons, most successful pirate craft were surprisingly small and nimble. Speed was valued over firepower. Many pirate captains chose sloops or brigantines, fast, agile vessels that could run down fleeing merchants or escape pursuing warships. These smaller ships could also navigate shallow coastal waters where larger naval vessels couldn't follow, providing crucial escape routes. A famous pirate ship captured in 1718 measured just 65 feet in length, smaller than many modern yachts, yet had successfully taken over 40 prizes. What these vessels lacked in size, they made up for in modifications. Extra sails could be added for bursts of speed. Keels were often shallower than merchant designs, allowing access to hidden coves and inlets. A pirate vessel might sacrifice cargo space for additional hammocks, cramming in extra men for boarding actions. The approach to a potential victim followed a well-rehearsed pattern. Pirates would fly a friendly or neutral flag to avoid alarming their target, a practice known as sailing under false colors. Only when close enough for boarding would they raise the infamous black flag, often featuring skeletons, hourglasses, or bleeding hearts, all symbols meant to intimidate their prey into surrendering without a fight. A warning shot across the bow usually accompanied this reveal. This demonstration of firepower carried a clear message: resist and be destroyed, surrender and be spared. It was no empty threat. Pirates were notably better gunners than merchant crews, with many having received training in naval service. Records from the period show that pirates typically fired 3 shots for every one successfully returned by merchant gunners. Pirates rarely targeted ordinary sailors, focusing instead on the wealth of their employers. A captured pirate captain once wrote that they had no quarrel with honest seamen, only with the purses of their masters. This wasn't just sentiment, it was a practical strategy. Merchant sailors who surrendered without a fight were often given the chance to join the crew, bringing useful skills and inside knowledge of future targets. Should the merchants still refuse to strike their colors or lower their flag and surrender, pirates would attempt to damage the ship's rigging rather than sink it. Shots aimed at sails and masts could immobilize a vessel without endangering its valuable cargo. Once the target was disabled, pirates would lower boats and row across with grappling hooks and boarding axes, overwhelming the merchant vessel with superior numbers. All these calculated aspects of the hunt, the intelligence gathering, the strategic positioning, the choice of vessel, the psychology of intimidation, were designed to maximize success while minimizing risk. For all their romanticized recklessness, pirates were practical predators who preferred their victims willing and their treasures intact. The moment of triumph would come when the merchant captain finally surrendered his ship. The real work was about to begin. Bloodshed wasn't a pirate's first choice. It was their last resort. When a merchant crew saw the black flag rising and dozens of armed men ready for battle, surrender often seemed the wisest choice. But when violence did erupt, pirates fought unlike any naval force of their time. Their goal wasn't to sink ships, but to capture them with cargo and crew intact. A ship riddled with cannonballs might not survive the journey to a safe port where stolen goods could be sold. Pirates knew that a poorly aimed shot could send their spoils to the depths. One captain warned his gunners that damaging the wrong part of a ship meant turning treasure into fish food, a principle that guided every aspect of their combat strategy. The boarding action formed the heart of pirate warfare. After disabling a target vessel by shooting at its sails and rigging, pirates would bring their ship alongside the prey. Specially designed grappling hooks, nasty iron claws attached to ropes, would be hurled across to lock the ships together. With escape impossible, pirates swarmed across using boarding planks or simply swinging over on ropes. This moment, the boarding, unleashed chaos unlike anything else at sea. Pirates cultivated terrifying appearances to maximize psychological impact. Some bound slow-burning fuses into their beards and hair, surrounding their faces with demonic smoke. Others painted their bodies with blood-red dyes. Many shouted in multiple languages, creating an impression of wild, uncontrollable fury. The weapons they chose reinforced this fearsome image. The curved cutlass, shorter and broader than a military sword, was the signature pirate weapon. Unlike the slender dueling blades favored by naval officers, the cutlass was brutal and effective in cramped shipboard conditions. It required little training to use effectively and could hack through rope and wood when needed. Firearms were a secondary weapon in pirate combat, as single-shot flintlock pistols were unreliable beyond point-blank range and ineffective in the rain. However, pirates often carried multiple loaded pistols in their sashes and bandoliers, not for accuracy, but to intimidate. A captured merchant sailor once recounted that while their aim was poor, their arsenal was overwhelming. He surrendered not because they could shoot well, but because they could miss 6 times before he had a chance to fire once. The boarding axe served as a combination weapon and tool. With a sharp blade on one side and a hammerhead or spike on the other, it could split a defender's skull or break down a locked cabin door with equal efficiency. Glass grenades, primitive explosives made from bottles filled with gunpowder and nails, cleared enemy decks before boarding. Some pirates wielded heavy clubs studded with metal spikes, weapons that could render a man unconscious without the potentially fatal blood loss of a blade wound. Useful when capturing skilled sailors they hoped would join their crew. The most terrifying pirate weapon was their coordinated ferocity. Naval and merchant sailors fought according to strict hierarchical commands. Pirates fought as individuals united by shared purpose. This fluid approach to combat confused and overwhelmed conventional defenders trained to maintain formations and await orders. The fighting itself was brutally short. Most shipboard battles lasted less than 15 minutes. Pirates aimed to create a swift impression of inevitable defeat. If the merchant crew believed resistance was futile, they would surrender quickly, preserving lives on both sides. Battle injuries were common despite pirates' preference for quick victories. Cutlass wounds to arms and shoulders predominated, followed by splinter injuries from shattered wood. Medical care aboard pirate vessels was surprisingly advanced for its time, partly from necessity and partly because captured ship surgeons were always offered a place in the crew. Rum served as both anesthetic and antiseptic. Wounds were cleaned with alcohol or seawater, then sealed with hot tar. Amputation was common for severe limb injuries, performed with remarkable speed by experienced ship surgeons. The pirate articles guaranteeing compensation for battle injuries created a strange incentive system. A lost eye might be worth 100 gold pieces, a meaningful sum for men who had previously owned nothing. This led to occasional disputes, as noted in one captain's logbook. Jenkins claims a tavern wench bit off his finger and demands payment per the articles. The surgeon confirms the wound, but says it more resembles the bite of the tavern's toothless dog. Payment denied. After combat came the truly dangerous part of a pirate raid: prisoner management. Captured crews outnumbered their captors in most cases, creating a precarious situation. Pirates addressed this by immediately separating officers from common sailors, offering the latter a choice: join the pirate crew or face imprisonment in the cargo hold until the ship reached shore. Many chose to turn pirate on the spot. Records from colonial courts show that roughly 35% of pirates began their outlaw careers after being captured themselves. Those who refused were generally treated according to how much resistance they had offered. Crews that surrendered immediately might keep personal possessions and be released at the next port. Those who fought fiercely could face marooning on deserted islands or worse. The battlefield success of pirates, often against larger, better-armed opponents, speaks to the effectiveness of their distinctive fighting approach. The reputation they cultivated through calculated violence served them as much as their actual combat skills. The psychological impact of a pirate attack lingered long after the physical wounds had healed. But for all the legends surrounding their combat prowess, pirates lived with the knowledge that eventual capture meant something. The average pirate's active career lasted just 2 to 3 years before ending in capture, death, or a rare successful retirement. When the law finally caught up with these sea bandits, the punishments were designed not just to end lives, but to send messages. Public execution was the standard fate for captured pirates. These weren't simple hangings, but elaborate spectacles. Pirates were often executed at harbor entrances, their bodies left hanging in iron cages until three tides had washed over them. The corpses would then be tarred and displayed in prominent locations around port cities as grim warnings. The legal proceedings before these executions were remarkably swift. The first dedicated piracy courts could complete an entire cruise trial in under 6 hours with a conviction rate approaching 95%. Most captured pirates claimed they had been forced into service against their will. Despite harsh realities, mythology quickly overshadowed fact. Buried treasure, that staple of pirate fiction, was almost entirely imaginary. Real pirates typically spent their loot within days of acquiring it. Only 2 authenticated instances of buried pirate treasure have ever been documented. Walking the plank appears in no contemporary pirate accounts. This elaborate form of execution was pure invention. Real pirates simply threw troublemakers overboard. Less dramatic, but far more efficient. Parrots, eye patches, and wooden legs became pirate stereotypes despite being relatively uncommon. Prosthetic limbs were luxury items far beyond most pirates' means, and parrots were valuable trade commodities worth several months' wages, too expensive to keep as pets. Perhaps the greatest myth surrounds pirate brotherhood. Nearly 60% of pirate captains captured during the Golden Age were turned in by their own crewmen, hoping for clemency or reward money. Honor apparently had its limits when the gallows loomed. Strangely, even as real pirates vanished from the seas, their cultural presence grew stronger. The first pirate-themed play opened in London in 1712, while actual pirates still threatened shipping. From the motley crews who formed unlikely brotherhoods through the daily grind of ship maintenance, the calculated hunt for prizes, the complex division of spoils, and the occasional fierce battles, pirate life was far different from our modern romanticized version.